welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Mercy Artist, and today I'm going to talk about my mother. I told you guys yesterday that my mother has always been a very sensitive topic to talk about, and I hope that God will give me the strength to at least explain her legacy to you, because she's long dead and gone. I have two small children, two young children, aged 4 and 6 years old, and I always get so shocked and so surprised, because despite the fact that they never met my mother, they always ask me about my mother all the time. They often ask me, where's my mother? What was her name? They ask me, why did she die? Did somebody kill her? I don't know. Imagine my kids, and it's scaring me to death, because I don't know if my mother is talking to them in the grave. I don't know what's going on. My kids have told me they want to go see where my mother was buried. They have told me like so many things, and it just gets me so emotional. I don't understand what's going on, but so many times, sometimes when my kids start talking about my mother that they never met before, it just gets me to want to cry, and they can't stop talking about her, and they never knew her. So that's so, if anybody knows what's going on, please try to explain that to me, because I don't understand what's going on, okay? So yeah, like I said, my children are asking me always who killed my mother. That is so weird, huh? 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Anyway, so I only learned after she passed on that my mother had been forced to marry my father. It was not so uncommon in those old days, but I didn't know the whole time I was growing up. My mother passed on when I was in high school, and I'm coming to that story right now. But if I can remember what my aunt told me, my dad in the village in Kabura wanted a second wife. And my mother and other girls were invited to go to the village and visit their aunt there. Now my dad was there and chose my mom secretly. My mom had no idea she had been chosen for marriage. She was a young girl in primary school. I can imagine maybe 13, 14, 15, because she was in primary school. And after she was chosen, they made secret arrangements with her parents. They paid dowry. She had no idea that she's the one that was to be married, and they paid money. And then now they had to, you know, from what I hear, they tied her with ropes and they forced her to marry my father against her will. And at the time, she had somebody she was in love with, and the guy was really beat up. And according to my aunt, she didn't like what was happening either, and she's the one who had informed my mom just before marriage that they were planning to marry her off, and she had run away and they had looked for her. Just very, very traumatizing story. So if you can imagine this young girl, she was so bitter, so angry, so much in denial. My aunt says that she tried to run away back to her home several times, but her parents had already sold her off. Her parents refused to welcome her back. She had nowhere else to go, so she had no option but to stay in this marriage. As much as I can tell you that my father was the best father that a child could ask for, I don't know if my mother can say that she had the best husband in the world. You know, there are those kind of men. They are really good fathers and they are not good husbands. I don't know. I cannot speak for my mother because she's dead. I don't know if she had a good experience in the marriage with my father. Okay, I don't know what she would say right now. Okay, from my understanding from my oldest siblings, my mom used to be so bitter that she beat my oldest siblings a lot, especially my oldest sister. My oldest sister didn't like my mom because, according to her, she was abused a lot. And I can imagine the pain and the anguish from this young girl who had been forced in a marriage and now having a baby girl, a daughter, and not wanting maybe the same thing that happened to her to happen to her daughter. I can imagine that she was extremely strict with her. By the time I was born, I was like my mom's 8th child. Several kids died in between. I was like my mom's 8th child. She had already accepted that she was married to this man, and I was not abused. I was also born sick, and my story is coming tomorrow, okay? My childhood story is coming tomorrow. I was also born, and so me, personally, my mom never abused me, and I was really, 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 really close to her. So, this is how I know my mother, okay? This is how I know my mother. I know her when she was a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. And living in a polygamous home, there were always several disagreements between my mother and my stepmother. And even more so, my mother and some of my step siblings. Some, especially one of them, one of the daughters, one of my stepsisters, was especially very cruel and mean towards my mother. I still remember vividly one day when my older brother had gone to surgery at Third District Hospital, and when he came back, I remember that the doctor had said that he should drink clean water. You know, there's not clean water in the village unless the rain falls. So she had asked for permission to get water. Oh my God, these stories are just too hard for me to tell. But there were several incidences of several verbal arguments, verbal fights between my family and the step family. So I also remember that my mother used to work a lot in the farm, a lot. She would like wake up very early at 6 in the morning, go to the farm, toil the farm. We would come back to school for lunch. We would find that she's still in the farm. We would have to start cooking lunch. You know, in primary school, then you have to come back and cook lunch and go back to school. Yeah. So she would toil the land until so late, and then she would come back, take a shower, go to the market to sell paraffin. Yeah, she sold paraffin at one point, and then come back home, and she would just lay on the couch and sing. She used to like to sing this song a lot in Luo. Yanya saja aneno gitiworo iseketo epini mwarakie Banjengidwe isule marie polo ikmokote malwetino loso chunya hobangi morka pakoi yanya saja heranido chunya hobangi morka pakoi yanya saja heranido. So yeah, she used to like to sing that song, and another song that I'm gonna sing for you guys later. So yeah, she was a really beautiful woman. I remember her very well, that she used to have like very long black hair that she used to perm it, yeah, like put chemicals or straighteners on it, and then she just maintained it with coconut oil, and it looked always so beautiful. My mom was so tall, so dark, so beautiful, and always smiling. I get my smile from my mother. She was always smiling. But I just remember every time that we went to church on a Saturday, so many times when we went to church on a Saturday, we would come back home and we would find that my step family had intentionally set cows to eat my mother's crops, and it would just traumatize her. She would cry, oh my God. It would just be like drama after drama. She tried to work hard. Imagine you're trying so hard to like grow corn, grow beans, grow maize, and then you go to church and you come back, but there was no money to put fences. You come back and you find that the cows have eaten all your crops. There were a lot of fights over farms, you know, but she held on to it because, you know, she already had children. She had to stay in this home. My dad gave her her own farms, and sometimes you could find that the step family was stepping beyond boundaries and going into her farms. And I remember another thing about my mother, that one day she drank poison and tried to commit suicide. This day I was a very young girl. And that day my mom had had one of the arguments, you know, one of the fights in the polygamous home. And so when I went to the bedroom, I was so young. Maybe I was less than 7 years old. I was very young girl. And then I had my younger sister who was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I was very young. We were very young, okay? And so I remember that when I went to her bedroom, I found my mother laying on the bedroom, and her eyes were closed and her teeth were clutched together. And we tried to call her to shake her, but she was not responding. I was so traumatized. Me and my sister, we were so extremely traumatized on this day. And we went to waken up my stepmother. We knocked on her door. We knocked, like banging, screaming, my mother is dying, my mother is dying, my mother is dying. But there was no response. We went to the next home and we were banging, we were crying, we were shouting, we were, please somebody save my mother, somebody save my mother. My mother has drunk poison, because we found that there was rat and rat. There was rat and rat next to her bed. She had drunk rat and rat. Yeah, that is like poison for killing rats. And so I remember we went to another home and they could hear us screaming. We were kids. Imagine we were kids like around 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, around that age. I was no older than 7 years old at the time. And imagine I'm screaming and knocking on our door, our neighbors' doors. They could hear us screaming. Nobody came out to help. Nobody. That is when I knew that human beings can be cold-blooded. And so we ran desperately. We ran like almost, we were running and screaming, help, 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 save my mother, help, help, help. So we ran all the way to other different homes until we remember that we have some relatives like across on the other side. Yeah. Now the Wambia family, yeah. On the other side there was another woman named Rose. So we crossed the road like very far away, very distant, far away. We crossed to the other side of the road. And we went to another home and we knock and we scream, somebody save my mother, save my mother. And then some women came out running. Some women that were, you know, the Wambia family. Now I'm saying, yeah, it was not the Kawambia, but it was the Rose, that other home, yeah. I don't know how to describe it. But they ran, they came running, yeah. They came running and they found when my mom was just moments away, like from dying completely. I remember them forcefully opening her mouth and forcing raw milk inside her mouth, like raw milk just from the cow, raw milk in her mouth, opening like forcefully and forcing milk, and then forcing raw eggs, raw milk, until my mom began to throw up. She was throwing up a lot. She threw up a lot. Eventually she came back and she opened her eyes. And when she opened her eyes, she was crying non-stop. And these women were talking to her. They were saying, look at your kids. They're so young. If you die right now, who will take care of your children? Her name was Phoebe. Phoebe, who will take care of your children? You're trying to kill yourself in this home. You have already survived all things that you have gone through in this home. Who is going to take care of your children? Who will take care of your children, Phoebe? You need to wake up and raise up your kids. Your kids are too young. So I just remember those women like telling her over and over again that she has very, very small kids that she needs to take care of, and she should not try to commit suicide. She should not drink poison again. So that was one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life as a small kid. We continued. My father always played the school role, yeah, everything, going to school, everything. My mother was more kind of just trying her best, because I told you I was born when my father had already retired. Okay, my father had already retired, and my mother now had to toil the land to feed us. Thankfully, we already had a home, so we didn't have to pay rent at the time. Okay, so we had to buy like the basic needs. My mother was really eventually so happy when my brother joined the military. My brother joined the military, my oldest brother joined the Kenya Air Force, and my mother, just remember, she was so happy. And then my brother got really sick. Really sick. And my mother had to go again to live with him in Nairobi. And then when after my brother got well, I remember one day that my brother sent her 300 shillings, like brand new 300 shillings. And she was so happy. She went to buy fish. My mother always wanted us to go to school and be successful so that we could help her out. And it's just sad. It's sad, and it really sucks that she never lived to eat a penny of us. Sometimes my mother could just call us when we are playing, and she would be like we are playing in another home, Mercy. And you think like she has something to tell you. She will be like, give me water, and water is just next to her. So she would be like, this giving me water is the only thing I will ever benefit from you. I will die tomorrow. My mother always said, I will die tomorrow. And we hated that, always saying, I will die tomorrow. Anyway, For me, as I grew up, I was very fond of my mother. I was very close to her. I was always a very outgoing girl. I would hug her. I would get her out of the zone. I also remember how she sacrificed so much so that we could eat. You could find sometimes that she had enough food for the kids to eat, but not for her. So most of the time she would just survive on tea, like strong tea, yeah, tea without milk, yeah, that has maybe some sugar, sometimes no sugar. So she mostly survived on tea. And some positive things also about my mother is that she was a very strong member of the SDA church. She was a strong member of the SDA church, and when she had gotten married, I understand that my dad had taken her to school to become a chef. So she could cook very well. So you find that most of the time when the Adventists were having a week of prayer, they would come, my mother would cook so many things, chapatis, kenyeji chicken, all kinds of stuff. Our home was always like the home where they have the main meal. You know, those people who know about the week of prayer, they go to different homes. There's breakfast home, the main meal home, and then they go back in the evening. She also joined a healthcare volunteer program called Nyamrerwa, yeah? My mother always grabbed like little opportunities to learn, to get educated, to learn a little bit more. And Nyamrerwa is just like those village nurses, okay? They didn't train professionally to go to school, but they went through like a crash program training such that they can give medicine to like basic stuff, basic illnesses like malaria, like, you know, stuff that don't require huge medical care. So she worked as a Nyamrerwa in the village. She had her green bag just walking around giving medicine. At one point, she was chosen to be the church elder at Uranga SDA Church, actually the first female church elder of Uranga SDA Church. So that is about my mother. I know there's so much things I can say, so many memories, but the legacy that I want to leave, the thing that I want the people to remember with my mother the most in this world is her staunch faith in God. Sometimes I always think that it is her prayers. She always prayed so much for her kids that have helped me through the many difficult times that I've gone through in my life. She prayed so much for her kids. She really was a prayerful woman. She used to sing Nyagendia every single day. Nyagendia is the Luo gospel songs that I'm singing and posting on my social media platform. She used to sing every day, because maybe those are the songs that gave her strength, and those are the songs that have given me strength. I want you to remember my mother as somebody who loved her family, loved her kid, but just like a young girl who got traumatized and wasn't always, you know, it was very hard for a young woman. My mother was like at least 34 years younger than my father. So it was very traumatizing for a young woman to live in this home with this other woman who is already been married and already has 10 kids. There was a lot of challenges that I cannot get into so much details. A lot of challenges, but she overcame. Sometimes she had to fight, sometimes she had to let go, sometimes, but most of it, the thing that held her the most was her faith. It was like the only hope. The religion was her only hope in life, and so she clung onto religion with all her hands, and that is all she could do. She knew how, you know, about the Bible. That is all that she could give you encouragement about. Now let me tell you about when I joined Ngia Girls High School. When I joined Ngia Girls High School, my mother was really happy because my older sister had gone to Luak Girls High School. Those are some of the top most schools in Nyanza province, okay? So when I joined Ngia Girls High School, my mother was really excited. And she's the one who took me to school. And there was a teacher there called Mr. Ochieng Osowo. Wherever you are, may God bless you. He's the one who actually helped me to secure admission at Ngia Girls High School. I had passed and qualified to join, but I had been called to a different school that was so far away. Like I told you, I had some health problems. So Ngia Girls was the best option for me. So she took me to school, and I got admitted through the help of Mr. Ochieng Osowo, and I started Form 1. And she would always make sure that she visited me. Many times I felt sad because, you know, at Ngia Girls High School, now I had those rich kids from Nairobi. And the rich kids from Nairobi, they were always visited in big cars. And their parents brought for them you know, Britannia box. Their parents brought for them big juices, like 5 liters juices. And all my mother could bring was maybe some chapatis that she had cooked at home. And maybe, I don't know what, but she could come with very, very, very little. And the last time that my mother visited me, I was a stupid teenager and I didn't appreciate her as much as I should have. Little did I know that this would be the last visit. I'm gonna jump back the story to the day that my mom passed on. So I was now in Form 3 and we were doing those exams. Yeah, they call index number examinations, whereby you are now going to get index number to go sit for your final high school examination. So this day I woke up and I was just not happy, like not okay. It was on a Wednesday, I still remember, because that Wednesday we used to eat rice, and rice was always my favorite dish in Nia Girls High School. That day they served us rice and I didn't want to eat rice. I kept singing this song. Mashaka mashaka twayaona, huzuni huzuni umeingia, nikimbie wapi nijifiche, kimbilio langu ndiye Yesu. Mashaka mashaka twayaona, huzuni huzuni umeingia, nikimbie wapi nijifiche, kimbilio langu ndiye Yesu. That day I was singing that song all day. I didn't know what was wrong. Then in the afternoon, like almost evening, I remember that the deputy principal called me. Her name was Mrs. Masese, and Mrs. Masese was the most feared teacher at Nia Girls High School. She was the disciplinarian. So when she called me, I got shocked, like, oh my God, what did I do? She always did the suspensions and the expulsion. So I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done wrong? So when Mrs. Masese called me and I went to her office and she looked at me, she clearly was shocked. It's like she had been informed that somebody had lost a parent, but she didn't know who it was. You know, in Nia Girls, I had this reputation of I was a good kid, okay? I was also on the bright side of the kids. I was not top 3 like I was in primary, but I was there. I was there on top of my class. So she looked at me and she was very, very shocked. And then she asked me, are you Marceline? And I said, yes. Are you Marceline Atieno? Yes. Are you Marceline Atieno Nyango? Yes. Okay, and then she told me, I want you to go home. And I was like, what? And she said, yes, I want you to go home. Mark you, I forgot to tell you that the second term when we closed, you know, because the index examinations are always in third term. The second term when we had closed school, I had gone home only to find that my mom was at Sierra District Hospital, admitted. And that day when I had seen my mother admitted, she looked so different. Like I told you, she had all her hair cut off and she looked very skinny. I later learned that my mother had suffered from stroke. That's what I was told in the village. And it was a very difficult holiday for me. It was very, very difficult holiday for me. I was always crying and my father always told me, don't cry, your mama is still alive. And I remember that when I went back to school for third term, for second term, my mother died in July. Yeah, for second term, I remember my mother just telling me that she will come and visit me. And this was one also of her favorite songs that she always sings all the time, every day, all day. Enjoy your Calvary, no loco Mondo Richona o segur, oyeting o Richona mali. Yesu no dieto gichandrock malishran. Okay, I'm sorry guys. I told you yesterday that this is a very emotional topic for me. I really miss my mother because I really wish that she got the chance to meet my kids. They would have the best grandma in the whole world. Anyway, let's continue. Sorry. So like I'm telling you, that day in the office, the deputy principal told me, your father wants to see you in the village. And he has come back from Nairobi. So that moment I knew that my mother had died, because my father lived in the village. So how was the deputy principal telling me that my father had come from the city and wanted to see me in the village. I just started to cry, and the deputy principal was like, Mrs. Wasese was like, why are you crying? Are you thinking something is wrong at home? And I said, yes. And she's like, what are you thinking? And I told her, I think my mother has died. And she was like, no, your mother has not died. Was she sick? And I was like, yes. And she's like, no, okay, your mother didn't die, only your dad wants to see you. So I just left the school and I was walking, you know, here girls high school is just off the main road. I was walking and I was crying. I just knew something was wrong, but I wasn't sure because they had not assured me what had happened. So one of the parents who has a car, one of those rich parents, he had already left the school. He had gone to visit his daughter. He saw me crying and he offered me a lift, and he drove me all the way to Siaya, just talking to me, encouraging me, telling me to be strong. He didn't know also what was wrong. It was just something we were just guessing. So when at Siaya, we always take a matatu that goes to Uranga. If you know that route, there's a matatu that goes, you know, those old matatus, they go from Siaya, Boro, Muer, Uranga, Nyadorera, you know that route, yeah? So I got on the matatu and it was so packed. I remember that I was standing. So in the matatu there was a woman who was talking, and she was saying, I'm going to a funeral, and I don't know where the home is at. And everybody was asking her, which funeral are you going to? And she started to describe my mother. She was married to a teacher. She's from Yenga. She's from Yenga, Uludu, blah, 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 blah. And everything she was describing with my mother. And then I just started screaming in the matatu, why? And then the woman looked at me. The woman was a distant relative. And she said, this is her daughter. And she looks exactly like her. And the woman started to cry too also. So I was crying, the woman was crying. From Siaya all the way to Ranga. Now everybody was telling her, just follow her. I'm sure she's the one. And she was like, yeah, she looks exactly like her. She's her daughter, this is her daughter. So I just cried until I got to Ranga. I got off. And then it's a very long walk to my village. So I walked. When I got to the village, I found that my mother had indeed, she had passed on, she had died, and she was laid in our sitting room on the sand from the river, and she was wearing her white dress that she always wore on the Holy Communion day. I just remember shaking her, talking to her, Mama, get up. Mom, how can you do this? How do you die? How do you leave me? I was crying. I wanted her to talk to me one more time. I wanted her to wake up so we can go to church one more time. But my mother was gone forever. Now what was really upsetting me was the fact that there were so many people that were eating and drinking alcohol. We had never seen alcohol in our home when we were growing up. I'm gonna pause and sing because the noise is a bit too loud, okay? This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all that day long. Okay, now, my mom's death left me with a lot of bitterness and anger. I felt like the world was not fair. Like, how could my mother die? Like, I was just still a young girl. I needed her the most. I was a teenager, you know. How could this happen? I was so bitter. I was so angry. I was cussing everybody at home. I was like, what is so funny? Why are you guys eating and drinking? I never saw alcohol in our home, you know. It was so. I was brought to my mother's funeral the day before she was buried. And before my mother had died, I had attended so many funerals in the village, and I had sung. But this day I could not sing. There were so many Adventists, so many Seventh-day Adventists who came to our home. And I just still remember when I saw the coffin coming, I was screaming, like, don't put my mother in that thing, don't put me in that. And I had to be pushed away. Oh my God. It was so difficult. After that, the next thing I remember is that they were having like a ceremony. Yeah, you know, the burial ceremony. I remember just my dad saying they had only one physical fight in all their marriage. And the next thing I remember is my brother, Pastor Vincent Odhiambo Nyango, telling me that my brother is also late, also passed on. My brother telling me that, why are you crying like that? Because I had been crying and crying and crying. Why are you crying as if there's no hope beyond the grave? As if you will never see our mother again. Our mother has gone to rest. Let her go and rest. I remember my older sister talking to me, walking me up and down from this place, like, oh my God. I do not wish anybody to lose their parent. I do not wish that for anybody. And if you have already lost your mother or your father and this story gets you emotional, I'm sorry, please receive my hugs. And may God be with you. May God be your angel. May God protect you in all your life. I love you so much, and you're not alone, okay? You are never alone, my sister. You are never alone, my brother. You are never alone. You are never alone. You are never alone. Your future is in His hands. Your struggles are in His hands. You are never alone. You are never alone. I didn't see my mother getting buried, but I saw the grave after she was buried, just with soil in the village. And I remember that day they were doing those Luo things, I don't know, whatever. My brother, who was then starting to become a pastor, said, we are not going to follow any traditions, we are not going to shave our hair, we're not going to do all that kind of stuff. So up to there, I'm going to close my mother's chapter, and I'm going to hope that she's resting with angels and she's singing her favorite gospel songs. Junya hopongi mor kapakoi, yaenya sacha herani do. Junya hopongi mor kapakoi, yaenya sacha herani do. Until we meet again, Mama Phoebe Aworo Nyango, may you rest with angels. Thank you so much, guys. See you tomorrow. I'm going to tell you about my own childhood now and my sister.